Hi, guys. Welcome to Getting Younger. We have plenty of room up front if people would like to move up. Please, says Heidi. Guys, I'm Eric Roza, CEO of DataLogix, and I'm here with Dan King and Steve Parsoneault. And I want to ask for a kind of a show of hands. Who is in better shape than you were 2 years ago? That's awesome. Now, who was that true for before you joined DataLogix? I want to see how much of that is DataLogix impact. So that's awesome too. Because I think for most audiences, it kind of looks like that, right? Where it's just most people are generally kind of, I would say, contented / resigned to getting in slightly worse shape each year for the rest of their lives. And I think there's Young. He's on board with that program. That's always driven me crazy. I remember when I was growing up, and with my infinite diplomacy, even at a young age, I said to my dad, "Dad, you're getting kind of fat," when I was like 13. And he said, "Well, just wait till you're my age." And I was like, "No, I don't want that to happen." And so I think that it's very easy to confuse kind of clock age, which is what age the calendar tells you are, and what age maybe your hairline or other things tells you are, and metabolic age, which is how old your system really is. And I've come to believe very strongly that those two are not tightly correlated. And there are some things that inevitably happen, but if you can kind of honor and respect them, and these include injuries and other things, I actually believe that your metabolic age, which is what really matters, right? Because that basically determines how long you're going to live and how functional you're going to be in the process, does not have to be that heavily influenced by your clock age. And I believe that I'm trying to live that myself right now, and I'm definitely in much better shape at the age of 47 than I've ever been in my life. But I'm still kind of maybe a slightly above average athlete, if I'm generous. I'm here with two guys who are world class in their 50s. And I think, so anybody who in the back of their head is like, yeah, whatever, but I don't have time, et cetera, like these guys are here to kind of disprove your kind of self-limiting beliefs about what's possible as you age. And I'm I know them they become friends through two very different channels. They just met today, and they couldn't be more different in almost every way. So it's going to be really fun about two different approaches to actually maintaining not only an acceptable, but a super elite level of fitness into your 50s and beyond. So what I'd like to do is, we'll start with Dan, is ask you guys to kind of introduce yourselves and talk about kind of what you do for a living, and this is, I don't want to make you brag too much, and that's really uncomfortable, but like brag a little bit about why do I say you're one of the best athletes in the world over the age of 50, but also talk about what you guys do for a living, because these are both technology guys. They're not training full time. They got families, they got the whole bit going on, all the excuses that all of us have. So Dan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan King, and my job is I'm CEO of ReadyTalk, and I'm grateful.
Hey, for ReadyTalk. Yeah.
ReadyTalk is a company that I started in 2001 with my brother, and we've built it up. We've relied on the lessons from being endurance athletes and persistent human beings to build a company. So there's a lot of correlation there. And then athletically, I'm a runner. I'm a distance runner. I'm an endurance athlete. I ran collegiately. I ran for the University of Colorado, who are the 2-time defending national champions in cross country as of this year. And we'll be probably 3-time defending champions next year because their team's awesome. And then since I've sort of maintained endurance sports all through my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. I had a lot of problems with plantar fasciitis with my feet. In my 40s, sort of got that under control, and then since I've turned 50, I won gold medal at the World Masters Track and Field Championships for 8K cross country when I was 52, and then I won the World's Fittest CEO competition in 2012 when I was 53.
That was a rigged set of events, it sounds like to me.
And then this year I have the 3rd fastest time in the world for the mile in my age group.
And how fast was that, Dan?
I ran 5:01 mile. I ran a 4:37 1500 this summer.
But I want to talk about Dan's 501 mile was run at altitude, so he didn't have the benefit of sea level. He also had a massive injury when he was running that, so not too bad.
Wow, wow, wow. Hi, my name is Steve Parsoneault. I am a mechanical engineering manager over at Seagate Technology, speaking of data, over in Longmont. So I've been a mechanical engineer since my whole career. I was educated out in California at UC Berkeley, and I moved out here about 5 years ago. About 6 years ago, just before I moved out here, I discovered CrossFit out in Santa Cruz. And I guess most of you know what CrossFit is. So I started competing about maybe a year after getting into CrossFit. And some of you may know that the CrossFit Games is a huge international event that for the last 4 or 5 years has been in Los Angeles. And, you know, it's many qualifying rounds to get there and so on. I've been there the last 3 years in a row in the Masters division. 3 years ago, I came in 4th, and then 2 years ago, I came in 2nd, and then this year, I only came in 10th. I kind of had a hard start. But yeah, that's my sport, and really enjoy it, and looking forward to trying to get out there again this year.
All right. Thanks, guys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, now that we kind of know you guys, I want to talk a little bit about how you guys approach what in my view are the key elements of kind of overall fitness and health. And this is just my view, so then I'm going to ask you guys to say if I've missed anything. But let's start with, just because it's fun, I'll start with the punchline because you guys have slightly different approaches here. Most people will tell you, and I certainly will, and I've spent a lot of time researching health and fitness, that nutrition is about 80% of health and well-being, right? So no matter how much you work out, et cetera, I actually don't think it's 80% because I think sleep probably and persistent stress get underrated in that equation. But certainly relative to exercise, nutrition, I believe, is the most important thing for day-to-day health. If you want to run a 501 mile, you better, at the age of 55, you better exercise a little bit. But if you want to be generally healthy, you want to start with nutrition, I believe. So let's start with nutrition and hear about 2 different paths. So Dan, tell us about how you eat. So what you eat, kind of, you know, how you think about calories, timing, any tips you have for people, et cetera. Because this isn't about saying what's right. It's just about giving you 2 very different paths.
Yeah, I am. So I'm mostly vegan. I eat almost exclusively plant-based diet. So, and that's been my thing since I was about 50 years old. So I guess my sensibilities were sort of influenced. I read a book called The China Study, and it got me sort of rethinking my diet and why I ate what I ate. I think that most people think way too much about whether or not they get enough protein, and most people get way too much protein, and I think very few people spend enough time thinking about are they getting enough fiber in their diet, which has so many health implications. And I think a lot of people, I think we just have it sort of a little bit flipped upside down. The thing, I was a little bit nervous about switching, because I did this when I turned 50. I was a little bit nervous that it would potentially impact my athletic performance, but it hasn't at all. In fact, if anything, I've been, relative to my age, I've been way more successful in my 50s than I've been at any point in my my competitive life. So that's me.
Do you think at all about other than kind of not eating meat? Do you think about other factors in how you eat? Do you think about like your carbo loading, total caloric consumption, sweets? Like, how do you think alcohol? Like, it just everything. Like, how do you think
yeah, I think, you know, the bane of a distance runner is the heavier you are, the slower you are, and the lighter you are, the faster you are. And I'm always like, gosh, if I want to compete at a high level, I know that weight has something to do with it. And it just kills me because I don't want to manage my weight. I never want to diet. It just drives me crazy. So because I eat a mostly plant-based diet, I feel like I eat a pretty balanced nutritional program. And then, you know, I probably drink too much. I probably eat too much junk food, like a lot of people. I don't want anybody to walk away here thinking I'm like one of those people that is just like, I've really got my head wrapped around everything I eat and being super consequent about it. That's not me at all. I just, so and as I get into racing seasons, if it's really important to me, yeah, I'll try to cut back on the amount of wine I consume or beer, just because I think it might help my weight, and I'll probably sleep a little bit better. But that's only, the way I approach athletics is I love goals. I love to have something out there that's 6 months out or 9 months out, and I don't have to train hard for 9 months, but I have to sort of build a program that gets me where I want to get.
Do you think about like organic? Does that matter to you? Do you
It
think
totally
about that?
does. I totally almost exclusively organic as well.
Yeah, and this is not a debate or these guys like arguing about stuff. I literally just want to present different points of view that have worked really well for these two guys.
Yeah.
Is anything else to say on nutrition or?
Man, so it's a good question. I'll think about it if I have another thought.
Steve eats plants too.
I eat mostly what Dan doesn't eat. So I call my diet paleo with privileges. So paleo is meats, nuts, seeds, eggs, fruits, vegetables, healthy fats like avocado, coconut, things like that. Pretty negative on processed foods. Grains, all grains, and all legumes are out. I mean, every once in a while I have like a little bit of rice or something like that, but generally, like, there's no bread or oatmeal or cereals in my house at all, right? The privileges part is pretty much red wine, dark chocolate, and tequila.
I think it's safe to say that Steve is the only one in this room who is actually sponsored by a tequila company. Anyone else?
Right.
And it's better than a Boulder-based tequila company.
You can be jealous. So yeah, tequila is pretty popular with CrossFitters. I think it's pretty clean, and it doesn't really affect my my training very much, I feel.
Does it affect your workouts if you have a couple shots mid-workout? How does that do?
A couple shots the night before definitely doesn't affect my workouts. Yeah, maybe during the same day of it might, So I eat pretty much 4 meals a day, every 4 hours. There's definitely meat at every meal. This morning I had 4 ounces of grass-fed beef, 1 egg, a very small orange, and coffee with about a 1/4 cup of heavy cream in it. So if you work out the math on that, that's about half the calories from fat and less than 20% from carbohydrates, and the rest protein. As far as kind of trying to target things, I mean, when I first got into this, I definitely weighed and measured and calculated. I mean, I'm an engineer, everything's like a spreadsheet, and I was taking blood tests every 5 weeks, and body comp tests, and I really kept experimenting, right, to get what I thought was the right results. These days, I pretty much I try and target about 150 grams of protein a day, I think. And as far as carbohydrates, I try and keep it kind of on the low side, probably 100 grams, around there, plus or minus. And then fats, I just eat them when they show up, pretty much. So I eat as much fat as I want. Like I mentioned, heavy cream. I would never buy anything non-fat, low-fat. I've been known to make my own Greek yogurt out of whole milk. I go for the fats as much as I want. Pretty much.
Steve, you have a pretty cool blog. Steve was one of the first paleo bloggers, and how do people find it? What's the best way to find it?
It's called stevepaleo.blogspot.com. Although if you just Google Steve Paleo and CrossFit, stuff will come up.
Steve has he has a lot of strong opinions on a lot of topics. He's also a great cook, and he's a very experimental cook, so some really neat stuff. The other interesting thing, we can't part from nutrition without this one, is he introduced me to the world of eating bugs. Tell us a little bit about that, Steve.
All right.
Really?
Yeah. So I was introduced to eating bugs actually in Thailand. The closer you get to the equator, the more common bug eating is, and the further you get away from the equator, the less common it is, right?
That's a supply-demand issue, I think, right?
Yeah. So they're really popular in Thailand. I mean, there's bug carts on the street, and they've got everything you might possibly want, and little girls are buying bags of bugs. So if you hang out there long enough, you kind of get used to the idea. But about a year or so ago, I was just looking through a trade magazine, and I saw a company called Exo. their website's exoprotein.com, and there were a couple young guys selling protein bars made out of cricket flour. And they got this idea in college. One guy was a crossfitter type of guy, power lifter, and the other, his friend, went to some talk about eating bugs. And the one guy was looking for healthy snack foods, and so the idea was born. So they started buying them crickets at pet stores, roasting them, and then putting them in the Vitamix. And when their buddies would come over, they would like offer them to their buddies, you know, mixed with dates and things like that, right? And so it turned into a company. Anyways, I saw them in a magazine. I'm like, that's not a good idea. Let's go buy some. And so I bought some, and they're actually quite good, you know. So I got reading up on eating bugs. And it's a funny story. I was in my backyard. I live in the woods. And I was reading this book on eating bugs. And I could hear the grasshoppers flying all around me. And I thought to myself, man, I can either just like read this darn book, or I could just get busy with this, right? And so I put the book down, and I went and I caught about a dozen grasshoppers that were just flying around my property. And I just Googled, you know, cooking grasshoppers, something like that. And here's how you do it, in case you're wondering. You just roast them in the oven, about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So you need an accurate oven, otherwise you'll like overcook them. So 200 F for about 20 minutes, and then a little bit of olive oil, maybe some shallot salt, you know, smoked paprika, and they're really quite good, you know. So then I started looking more into what would be like commercially available, and you can buy cricket flour online right now. If you go to Amazon, you can buy cricket flour. And cricket flour,
What the price is?
yeah, it's $40 a pound right now. But cricket flour is 70% protein by weight. So if you buy a pound of cricket flour, that's like, you know, like 10 ounces of, well, actually, cricket flour has got more protein than steak, sure. It's got more protein than jerky. So crickets are dry.
A lot of good fats too, right?
And some good fats, right. So, I mean, it's expensive. It's probably going to get cheaper. There's farms like popping up in Thailand and Louisiana and stuff like that. So I think it's going to get cheaper. It's more sustainable than beef, right? But yeah, so it's expensive, but you don't use that much. So we had a little Christmas party, and I brought some cricket brownies, quite popular, right? And the recipe was basically a paleo brownie recipe that called for a cup of almond flour instead of regular flour, right? And so I put a cup of cricket flour in there. And I mean, I experimented over the months with that, like adding more and more, you know, and probably wouldn't want to put more than a cup of cricket flour in these things. I mean, pretty much as you're making it, you know, until the last ingredient goes in, you're like, this is not a good idea. But once the last ingredient goes in, you cook them up, then they're just fine. Although, I mean, I can definitely smell the crickets when I'm cooking them. But you don't really notice them when you're eating.
That's awesome. Steve actually is also sponsored, you'll be unsurprised to hear, by Exo Cricket Bars.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned that is that they were supposed to have a bunch of cricket bars for us to sample here today, and the package didn't come, but when it comes, we'll let you guys know, and everybody, if you are still inclined, can try cricket bar. My wife wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Steve gave me two. One was really good. It was kind of the cocoa chocolatey one. The other one was peanut butter and jelly, which was not to my taste. So I fed it to my kids, and they loved it. So. All right. So enough about nutrition. How much do you guys sleep? Is that you got that under control? Is that a problem? Sleep is, you know, massive importance in health, and most of us, including me, don't get nearly enough, and it gets harder as you get older and all that.
Man, I'm in bed at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Like if I'm really training hard, which I normally am, right? I am just I'm sacked out early, and I get up at about 6 o'clock, so I get a lot of sleep. Yeah, a lot of sleep.
9 to 9.5 hours.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
right. That's right.
Yeah, not here. I think it's a challenge for me because my routine isn't consistent around sleep. I have a lot of nights where I'll be up way past 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then most days I'm up probably around 5:45 to 6 o'clock, 6:15. And it goes sort of with what's going on in work, you know. If work is stressful, I get less sleep if it's not. But I generally try to sleep about 7 to 7.5 hours a night, and I feel like if I'm doing that, I don't tend to notice that I have setbacks. But once in a while, I get a little bit tired.
What about tell us how much we have to get into the details, but like about how many times a week do you guys work out, and for how long, and how do you find the time? Because you guys are both really busy guys with other, with other stuff, and we all, including myself, make excuses all the time.
Right.
And for me, when I work out at 5:30 in the morning, so it's always trading off against sleep and family time, which is a crappy trade-off to make, right? But it's just the reality. How do you guys think about the trade-off and how much time you spend and all that?
Yeah, ideally, I work out every day of the week. I got it in my head about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that not working out was it sort of starts the decay cycle as you get older. And one of the things that your body does at a physiological level is when you put it under stress, it has to respond to the stress. And I think that's actually very correlated to what sort of slows down the aging process. So, I used to be the guy that if I was injured, I would run, and if I was not injured, I would run, and if I got injured, I would just rest and take time off. And after I read a book called Younger Next Year, and whether or not that book was really well researched, or it influenced how I thought about my own training pretty significantly. So instead of taking time off when I get injured, I just do something else that's still exercise, just not the thing that I'm injured. So I've become a multi-sport athlete. I do triathlon now. I swim, I bike, I do elliptical trainer. I have TRX straps in my basement, so I use those once or twice a week. I do yoga once or twice a week, those types of things. If I get an injury, I just shift what I'm doing. In terms of the frequency, I invariably will miss a day here or there because of my workload. I'll have days where there's just no windows of time, and I wasn't willing to get up early enough to do it in the morning. But by and large, I try to keep my lunch hours free at least 3 days a week so I can run or do something at lunch. I'll get up early in the summertime. I get up on my bike and ride from my house in Boulder to my office in Denver twice a week. I get up about 4:45, jump on my bike, get my exercise in, and I get to the office by 8. So I make it work. I'm sort of a no excuses about that in terms of how I approach it.
So fortunately, I think CrossFit's like really, really efficient as far as
especially when you have a CrossFit gym in your office, right? No excuse.
You guys are so lucky. Yeah, I've got my own deal at work too. But basically, I probably do CrossFit. I would say about 6 times a week. Some days I double up. I never really plan a rest day.
6 times meaning about an hour each, kind of?
Yeah. Not longer than an hour each, yeah. And sometimes a fair amount shorter, to be honest, right? I would say probably 6 days a week, but sometimes, like, as far as like rest days, like I don't really plan a rest day, but sometimes they just take me. So if I'm really feeling beat down, then I won't do it, but I think I'm better off. I like what you said, it's like, I think maybe as you get older, it's better to move more on a consistent basis than to move like really hard and then take like full days off and stuff like that. I just feel better if I'm doing something every day. Like sometimes, like Sunday tends to be my day kind of off, but I'll probably be out like chopping wood, So I'm still moving, but I'm not like cleaning and jerking, hundreds of pounds or anything like that, right? So the intensity level is much, much lower. Like we have these comp wads at CrossFit Games, and I think
that's a kind of a competitor, more intense workout.
Yeah. And there's maybe, like 5 of those programmed a week or something like that. I could never like hang with all of those 5 days a week. It would kill me, right? So you really have to talk about intensity as well as frequency, So like half my sessions are really intense. The other half might be more like skill-based things or stuff like that. Or it might even be just climbing at a rock club or something like that, So really varies a lot. But I definitely feel best if I'm doing something every day.
Talk to me. You guys. So actually, I want to comment on this because you guys surprised me there, which is my view has been as you get older, you actually need to be really conscientious about putting in rest days. But again, this isn't so much a debate. It's just talking about what works for different people because these guys in their own way basically are saying, kind of screw the rest day, right? You got to keep doing stuff. And so maybe I got to rethink that too. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about where you guys get your motivation, no matter how inherently skilled you guys are, and I'm sure you are genetically and otherwise based on stuff you did earlier. There's a competitive fuel clearly that to perform at the elite levels you guys are at, which is crazy, right? So, both of these guys have come in the top 3 in the world for their chosen sports within the last few years, which is insane. Where does that deep motivation come from? Like, is it an internal drive? Is it like, just what is it? Where's it coming from?
Question. So when you are competing at a world-class level, it is a little bit addictive, right? Because you feel kind of special, right? Like, so I can't lie about that. But also for me, a buddy of mine said something once. He said, if you do CrossFit, you can roll off the couch any Sunday and do whatever you want. Right. So I've always been into adventure sports. So take ice climbing. Like I ice climb once a year for like 3 days. Do I like prepare for it? Heck no. Just show up and just do it. Right. Backcountry boarding. I don't spin chairs at resorts. I go up into the mountains on it's called a split board. It's like a snowboard that splits down the middle. Right. And do I have to like train for that? Heck no. I just show up on Sunday and do it. Right. So I really like doing that stuff. And as long as I keep CrossFitting at a high level, I can literally roll off the couch any Sunday and do whatever I want, and that motivates me.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's become such a habit for me in terms of just training regularly and just never. I competed collegiately, and it was a love-hate thing. It was so intense, and it was 4 years, and by the end of it, I was so done with athletics. I was so ready to never have to race again. I probably didn't race. I probably raced once in the next 5 or 10 years. I really didn't care about it, right? I was just cooked. But then I sort of internalized it as just my routine again. And then what sort of happened to me of late is I realized I still really love that experience of having a goal, training for it, and seeing how good I can do. So I just continually cycle through, there's something out there that would be really interesting to try and go put my energy into. And then I just started to work backwards from where that endpoint is, and then how do I get from here to there? And it's just become a cycle for me. To what Steve said, though, I also just love the fact that I can go do whatever I want, athletically still in my 50s, and a lot more than a lot of other people can do. Like for me, I love to alpine ski, and I'd love to, like, for example, go to Highlands Bowl and just hike that bowl loop after loop and just rip down that terrain because it's just phenomenal. And you have to take care of yourself, and you have to be pretty strong to do stuff like that.
Some bolder stereotypes going on right now. So we talked about nutrition, we talked about workout, we talked about sleep. The other key component of fitness is kind of stress management and approach to kind of mindfulness and all those kinds of things. You guys think consciously about those things?
I do yoga a couple times a week, and I think I started doing it because I thought it was going to help me solve my plantar fascia problems because of the stretching and sort of working the back of the body. And one of the real appreciations I've gotten from doing yoga is it is way more important to me now because of how it just allows me to have some tools for managing stress through breathing and just being sort of highly aware. So I'm a huge advocate of yoga. I don't have to do it a lot, but it gives me a really, really good set of tools, I think, for how to just handle that type of thing.
Do you do any formal kind of meditation stuff as part of that, or is it all moving kind of yoga?
You do the final, like, sort of shavasana, meditation piece. I've also done a couple other programs that were sort of meditation oriented. I don't really actively meditate, but I use breathing all the time as just sort of a way to make sure I've got sort of a calm central nervous system. And
some would argue that is active meditation.
Okay, well then I do.
Okay. So when you say stress management, you mean like mental stress, or you mean like physical stress?
I guess I'm thinking more, mental stress, like
mental
just keeping
stress.
your head in the right place, and, mindfulness, being detached, being aware of what's going around, all those kinds of things. I'm not necessarily talking about formal meditation. Maybe you do nothing, but anything like that ever become part of your regime? Or
no, pretty much nothing. My stress management is working out. Like as long as I can work out, then I'm good to go. If I'm not working out, I can't sleep. I get grumpy.
Another way to ask it, but I think I know the answer already, is working out, especially CrossFit, is kind of the yin energy. It's the active, masculine. Do you have the yang that's the yang energy? Do you have the yin, softer thing?
Walking the dog in the woods. I mean, I'm not a very stressful
eating raw
guy.
meat, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Hunting down grasshoppers.
Tell us about each of us about a big setback you've had in your fitness at some point in your life. What's the biggest one you've had so far?
The biggest one I had was about 3 years ago. I was just goofing around. I call them monkey tricks. When you're training in a CrossFit environment and there's a coach and stuff like that, as long as you follow the instructions and do all the warm-ups, everything is cool. As soon as you get off on your own and start doing monkey tricks, then you're wide open for injuries. And the monkey trick that I was trying to do was a one-armed kipping pull-up. Which, so what that means is you're going to grab that bar with one arm and you're going to use your core and just go bam and just try and do a one-arm pull-up, as opposed to a nice gradual.
If I recall, you were actually trying to work your way up to a one-armed Fran, for those who knows what that is,
which
is 45 one-armed kipping pull-ups.
Yeah, right. I'm in my late 40s and I think I'm going to do a one-armed Fran, right? So anyways, I was fully warmed up and I went to do that and just popped my bicep right off the bone. So it's an interesting thing about muscles and tendons. If you do it slowly, there's some response your body has that it will shut that muscle down so that you don't pull that tendon off the bone. But if you surprise it and really give a jolt, you can actually pull yourself apart. And that's what happened. It just pulled the bicep, this one here, right off the bone, and the bicep went up. And this was after my team had qualified for the CrossFit Games. This is in June, right before we were supposed to go, right? So I knew I was toast at that point. So, and those things don't fix themselves. You have to go in, they have to reattach it, and there's a big old rehab thing and stuff like that. So that was a pretty good setback.
It took you a full year to be second best in the world after that happened.
So that injury was in June, right? Then the next, of course, the CrossFit Open starts around February, and I just missed qualifying for the games by 2 places, 7 months after the repair, But the bummer about that kind of injury is, injuries cause other injuries, right? So if you, in that case, I had a cast for a little while and I lost some mobility, and then I ended up with some, later some tendonitis and stuff like that. And I just had problems associated with that injury, So that was a pretty solid setback. Besides that, it's just things and dents,
One, my observation as I look at kind of my buddies, many of whom were much better athletes than me 20 years ago, and very few of them are now. And what are the excuses kind of people make? And again, I say excuse not in an uncharitable way. It's just a reason not to do something, right? It's all. I think there's a perception that there's a long, slow decline with age, but that's actually not what happens, right? What happens is their step function changes and you never get back up. And so I believe the 3 main causes of those: one is a change in work situation. Another one's a change in family situation, like having a kid, right? So these are I'm too busy now, I'll get back to it at some point in the future. And then the third one is kind of an injury or health change where you kind of fall off the wagon. So that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I think, especially for older athletes, the message is, when you're young, you feel pretty bomb-proof. I mean, I felt bomb-proof into my 40s for sure. Then at some point, you become not bomb-proof. And you need to be really conscious about overuse injuries, right? About doing monkey tricks. Is it worth it? It's not really worth it. I haven't tried a one-arm pull-up since. And anytime something kind of challenging comes up, I'm such a sucker for these things. I always think back and okay, that's kind of a monkey trick. Is there potential to get injury there? And if there is, I just kind of back off,
Yeah.
Dan, how about you?
I am always injured. I don't know. I mean, seriously, and I'm just a really grouchy person to be around when I'm injured too. But I think the challenge I have as I've gotten older is I still like to run 5-minute mile pace to 5:40 mile pace from sort of the mile distance to maybe the 10K distance. That's sort of my sweet spot athletically. And to get to be fast at those distances relative to my age, I just have to train hard. And the type of training for me to achieve the kind of goals I have as a runner, they just lend themselves to, soft tissue injuries, tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, strained calf muscles, strained quadriceps, strained ab muscles. I mean, it's amazing to me what sort of goes wrong. So
maybe you need to throw a little CrossFit in there.
Yeah, maybe,
sorry, I won't.
Maybe. I think I was trying to do something CrossFit-like, which is how I hurt my abs, quite frankly. But that was sort of a surprise to me. So the things that, for me, I've just gotten. I try to get better about sensing when I'm starting to do that to myself and backing off before I get into the injury cycle, because what I also notice is in my 50s, it just takes forever to heal anything anymore. It just blows my mind how slow the body heals itself compared to a 20-year-old body or a 30-year-old body. It's not even the same game anymore. It's like what used to take 2 weeks to recover from now takes 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And it's like, are you kidding? And that's the discouraging part at times, because when you have those setbacks, that running goal or that athletic goal that's out there, all of a sudden it's like it all of a sudden becomes very much in jeopardy, and then I become a head case. So I just do my best to try to recognize them as they're coming on. Things like runner's knee, or there's so many. Running is a hard sport. Even if you have good form, if you push your limits in that sport, you're going to sort of figure out what those injury points are.
Oh, I got a bunch of more questions, but I also am looking at the time, so I wanted to see if anybody out there has questions. Anybody have a question?
I've read a bit and talked to a lot of people about climbing CrossFit, and it seems like the general consensus is kind of that you're out of shape or weak or slow. CrossFit is really helpful to get into better shape. But as far as like really helping you become specifically a better climber, I'm curious what's your opinion on that. And as far as like backcountry laps and stuff, I think cold shoes will help. It's just that endurance.
Let me just repeat the question for the camera. So the question was really something sports specific, like climbing. Is CrossFit going to help you if you're making that your priority, or where's the positives, where's the negatives?
Yeah. So with regards to climbing, I mean, I'm not like an awesome climber, like like maybe a 5'11" kind of climber on a good day. I think what CrossFit does is CrossFit really encourages a lean body, right? And a lean body is really important for
define lean body, because some people might be looking at you and go, that guy doesn't look lean, but you mean something specific by that.
I think that probably if you were to look at world-class climbers, they're probably all like 10% body fat.
So he's really referring to percent body fat, right? So having big muscles doesn't mean you're not lean in that definition, right? So you want bone density. At some level, some people believe you want as much bone density and muscle mass as possible, and at some level as little body fat as possible, maybe.
Yeah. So anyways, like if your goal is to be like a world-class climber, probably some CrossFit would fit into that. I mean, CrossFit is there's a lot of like dynamic upper body movements, right? Like muscle ups and bar muscle ups and things like that, where climbers could really take advantage of that. So, but for me, it just allows me to any Sunday to just roll out of bed and go to the gym. And I know that I can hold on to those rocks and climb, at a pretty high level without just getting totally, tired and burned out. Or, sometimes I'll go up to Wyoming to climb for a few days. I don't train for that stuff either. I just go up and just do it, right? So, CrossFit allows you to go out and enjoy those sports at a moderate level, and do it kind of any time you
because of the I have an opinion on this. Because of the nature of CrossFit, you have to be good at so many things. It's very hard to be world class at any one of them, especially if you're a world class CrossFitter like Steve is. There's no chance, in my view, that you could be a world class CrossFitter like Steve and be a world-class climber. You might have been in the past, or be a world-class weightlifter, or be a world-class runner. You just can't do it, because a world-class weightlifter is going to have to build up a lot of bulk, but then they won't be able to bang out 60 pull-ups in a minute like Steve can, right? So it's like, you want to be, it's the prototypical jack of all trades and kind of master of all, but not elite master of all. And that's what CrossFit kind of rewards. So I would say, if you want to get to the next level in climbing or anything, and that's the priority, then you use CrossFit as supplemental, not as primary.
Yeah, totally agree. That's well said.
Anyone else? Yes, Steve, you probably have the strongest opinion here, but Dan may have some thoughts here too. So the question was, what's the philosophy of using body weight versus needing supplemental things to kind of get strong and be fit?
I think it's valuable to do both. I would never choose like one over the other. I mean, I know there's a lot of systems out there where you can do body weight exercises and so on, you know, but I think, I mean, for me as a competitive CrossFit athlete, I have to definitely go beyond body weight exercises to be good at that sport. I think body weight exercises are awesome, you know, like.
But you're not going to deadlift 400 pounds if you're just doing,
no, you are not. You're gonna break in two. You know? So they both have their place, and I think they're both super valuable. And I think you really have to do both if you want to really, you know, excel in fitness, basically.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate, obviously, just resistance against your own body weight. So TRX straps, things like that, push-ups, pull-ups, you know, chin-ups. I try to incorporate that kind of stuff into just my training because I just think it's just good health in general. I don't think it really helps me as a runner, but it's not only about running. It's, you know, so, but I'll just incorporate that into my routine. But I rarely do anything on like a weight machine or with weights.
Dave, did you have a question too?
Don't know if you don't try. Yeah, good question. I do not do cheat meals. I mean, to me, like a T-bone and some smoked sweet potatoes and some red wine, that's as good as it gets, you know. So I don't do cheat meals. I think that, you know, commonly when people first get into this paleo thing, they really miss some of that stuff, pizza and things like that, you know. And so it's quite common to have cheat meals in the beginning. But if you do this for like 5 or 6 years, you pretty soon you're like, I don't need that stuff at all. And when you do have some of it, it usually jacks you up, you know. I mean, if I were to eat like a bunch of pizza right now or something like that, I would not feel good afterwards. And I figured this out maybe about a year and a half or so into it. I had cut out all grains, and I used to be a big beer drinker. I wasn't doing that. And I was at some party, and there was a bunch of like French bread and dark beer. Man, I just loaded up, and I felt terrible. So that's something like really unique about a paleo diet is it kind of man, if you deviate too much from it after a while, it bites you, you know, those foods. So no cheat meals for me. I just try and eat really good food.
Anybody else?
That's a great question. There's no place I would rather run than on trails. I don't know if you're a runner, but if you've ever gotten like Batasso Preserve, the whole Mesa Trail system, there's so much great trail running in and around Boulder. And I hate running on bike paths. I hate running on pavement. And I also think that my running longevity is extended by running in those places. And for me, so back to this sort of meditative, spiritual aspect of it. I'm amazed at how much just sort of peace I get from an hour and a half of trail running compared to 45 minutes of just like, I can't wait to have this workout be done if I'm running on the street. So I think running's an interesting sport. Like if you start to do it, when I started to do it as a young person, I actually really didn't enjoy it very much for a very long period of time, but I continued to do it because I figured out really quickly that I had some ability for it. And then somewhere along the way, it became a very much just a part of me and a very natural thing for me. And as I've gotten older, what I find is that I use it. I get a great sense of just sort of calmness when I can go run. I have the ability to sort of contemplate things. I can just tone everything out for a while, or I can, you know, just let my mind sort of wander and tackle things. But when I get up in the trails, it's a whole different experience for me. So I would, you know, but I don't really race, do trail racing. The same thing on biking. If I have my preference, I'll be on my mountain bike over my road bike. But my road bike's really convenient because, you know, commuting to Denver takes a lot longer on a mountain bike.
Another hand. So are your families just as active?
Our family's active. Man, that's such a funny question too, because I have two daughters, and I've joked at work. I tell a story. My oldest daughter, she played competitive soccer, but she always would like run the boulder, even starting as a 6-year-old, because she wanted to do it. So I've never tried to push her into running, but she has so much talent. I took her I took her to a 5K in Denver once when I think she was 7 or 8, and I just assumed she was old enough and mature enough to figure out how to run a 5K race. I think she thought I was going to run with her, so I left her at the start, and I did my own race. Social services should have picked me up for this. And I got to the finish, and I waited for my daughter to come in, and she never came in. I'm looking at my watch going, she would have been done by now. She's actually a pretty good runner. But she ended up coming in a squad car about an hour and 45 minutes later. She actually got a time for the event, too, which is interesting. But
has she forgiven you yet?
She sort of has. I think it's because it happened when she was young enough. She maybe didn't remember it that well. It was a pretty sort of an embarrassing moment. But I realized a couple of things about myself. I get a little bit worked up at the start of a race, and I sort of lose my good judgment. And that's interesting. It's actually true. I sort of I get a little bit crazy right when something competitive is about to happen. So she feels a little bit the pressure, but she's embraced it. She actually just started running cross country this year as a sophomore in high school, and she had a fantastic year. She made all region for Boulder County for cross country. So it was pretty cool.
I have two daughters, and I would say they're moderately active. One is dabbled in CrossFit, but and they're both in their early 20s, so they've got lots of distracting things. My current partner, Lori, she teaches ski fit at CrossFit Sneeda. She's a world-class mountain climber and a darn good rock climber too. So we get out and do stuff quite a bit. Like backcountry boarding. She'll just run in snowshoes. While I snowboard. So that's about it.
Anybody else? Any other questions? So, okay, last question for you guys. What's your game plan? You guys are pretty old already. I'm assuming you're hoping to get a good bit older, and given the way you guys are living, I'm guessing you're going to get a whole lot older. What's your game plan? Like, how are you going to deal with that? At some point, you can't keep getting better and stronger and all that. How does that work? How do you think about that?
Good question. It's interesting. I'm very curious about, we're in our 50s, right? And you start wondering when you're going to start sliding backwards, right? Personally, I believe that, like, what I'm really focused on is maintaining lean body mass. If I can keep maintaining or growing lean body mass, then I'm making progress, getting younger perhaps, right? So as a matter of fact, like in the last 18 months, I had some body fat tests at your place there, and I gained like 4 pounds of lean body mass in the last 18 months. Wow. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sliding backwards yet. All my numbers are still going up. I'm just kind of waiting for that day where things start sliding backwards, right? But I'm going to fight it off as long as I can. Not sure how long that's going to be, but I'm not slowing down a bit. I'm just going to keep on trying to improve my numbers and be conscious of injury, really. The overuse injuries are they show up more and more at this point, But I fully hope to be improving kind of through my 50s, so how it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah, one of the great things, one of the things I really like about running as a masters athlete is that there's there's still a ton of people that still run competitively as masters athletes, and there's age-graded calculators which let you basically compare how you're performing to people that are competing in their prime. So you always have this basis, A, to compete against people in your own age group, and B, to also compare yourself athletically to people that are running at any age group. And that's one of the really cool things about it, because it's not realistic. If you look at the age grade calculators, you see very clearly that when endurance athletes hit their mid-30s, they start to to decline relative to people in their prime. It starts to happen around 35. So the first age group you can run in as a master's athlete is 35 to 39 internationally. In the United States, it's 40 to 44, but close enough. But you can use those age-graded calculators to see exactly what kind of decline just sort of is built into the human condition. Because realistically, you know, your heart rate goes down by about, your max heart rate goes down every year from what it was the year before. You know, these are just
by about 1 beat.
By about 1 beat. Yeah, these are physiological changes that happen. You know, what I've come to realize is that I can get a huge amount of mileage, no pun intended, but I can get a huge amount of benefit as a master's athlete by cross training. So I do other sports, and the basically for me, the fact that I can always have sort of a new 5-year age group to compete against, it looks to me like I can do this as long as my body cooperates, and the body part tends to be things like knees, feet, those kinds of things. When those things go, then you're pretty much probably ought to resign yourself to calling it a career. But right now I'm still running fantastic. I don't see any reason why I can't. I just turned 55 last summer, so I'm young in my age group. So I'm going to go run in the World Masters Track and Field Championships in France in August. I try to get on the podium in the 1500 meter because that just sounds like a really cool challenge. I've only run 2 of those in my entire life. And so that would be a fun thing to do. So now I have a great goal. And then when I turn 60, I'm going to be excited again because I'll be young. And then when I turn 65, I'm going to be excited again. So
I have to admit it's terrible, but I'm 47 and I'm already going, God, when I turn 50, most people are dreading that. And in some ways I go, I'm going to be at the youngest age for the CrossFit Open. And in the 45 to 49-year-old age bracket, you don't get a drop in weight. So you have to do the same thing as the 25-year-olds, but you compete with the old guys. When you turn 50, you actually get a drop in all the weights. And I'm like, that's when I'm going to see my opening. Well, Dan, Steve, it was totally fantastic and inspirational to have you guys with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.